From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota Legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB serves South Dakota through an interconnected communication system that is on 24/7, 365. The first place for Amber Alerts, public safety announcements, and EAS messages. SDPB keeps public servants and citizens informed. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone in the room and online. The Senate Judiciary Committee will now come back to order. I would like to ask everyone to please take a seat and have your phones turned to silent. If you plan on testifying this afternoon, please sign in. If you are testifying and have handouts, you can give the pages those to distribute them. Lobbyists, make sure you're wearing your badges and that the badge is clearly visible. And as a reminder, all testimony and questions are to be addressed through the chair. At this time, I would ask the secretary to please call the roll. Oh, we don't have to do that anymore? Okay, cool. All right, because we're just going in from recess this morning. We don't have to approve our minutes because we're just continuing. Pages, would you like to come up and introduce yourself really quickly since we didn't have you this morning?
All right, my name is Joshua Brandt. I'm from Mitchell Christian, and I'm a senior there. And then I do not have any plans for the future yet.
All righty.
Madam Chair.
Yeah. Go ahead, Senator Pischke.
Thank you. I was just going to have a point of information. I noticed that District 30 is very well represented with pages this year, or this term, because there was 2 of them in Senate Ag this morning, and then the good page over here is also from District 30, Hot Springs. So I don't know what you have in the water down there, but your youth are very involved in politics. So kudos to you.
It's almost like they have a Gen Z state senator that maybe has inspired them to get more involved in state government or
Well, I
something.
wouldn't go that far, but okay.
Okay, well, after that announcement, let's move on to the consideration of bills. So we'll start right away with HCR 6015. Any proponent testimony?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Representative Eric Mucky, District 15, downtown North Central Sioux Falls. I'm here and very pleased to bring you HCR 6015. Normally, I would say anytime we bring forward a CR related to summer studies, we kind of all groan and say, why? Why I want to make sure I bring this to you, especially for committee purposes, is with latitude. This is actually a response to a previous bill I brought forward. If you're willing, I'm happy to speak to that in terms of the subject of this. Really what this summer study is a response to is a bill that I previously brought forward in the House, House Bill 1114, which is a bill to address concerns involving involuntary mental health commitments and the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. As we proceeded with that bill, it became very abundantly clear that when you're navigating that type of system, you're dealing with something incredibly complicated, and that the bill itself was not the appropriate vehicle to move forward with. Instead, the stakeholders that were impacted by that bill came together and said, we need to focus on a summer study. And what that summer study focused on is what you have in front of you, HCR 6015C. The focus being a summer study focused on the study of county mental health boards, as well as their interactions with the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. Words are hard, apparently, after the floor session. I apologize. What this CR is, it doesn't change commitment law, it doesn't create new prohibitions or mandates. It's really just focused on, we need a study on our mental health statutes in Chapter 27A, and we need them fairly urgently. The reason being, at this moment in time, sort of why the study is warranted, we have a number of folks who have identified a gap when it comes to our county mental health boards and the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. County boards play the most primary role in that petition process and process when it comes to involuntary mental health commitments. And the process is extremely consequential. It is life or death. Certain involuntary commitment information is transmitted to the Attorney General for transmittal to the NICS system. So if you're familiar with NICS, that is our National Criminal Background Check System, by which somebody who's placed under an involuntary mental health commitment would not be able to purchase a firearm under federal law. That intersection is extremely legally and operationally complex. So the challenge before us, and why I brought this forward, is that many partners in this process recognize that county mental health boards are trying to operate under statutes that in many cases are outdated or might need procedural focus. So when county to county practice varies, that risk includes inconsistent outcomes, confusion for practitioners, and unfortunately, in some cases, life or death scenarios involving somebody with a mental illness. And so I bring this forward to you not as a case of, I know that we have a summer study process separate to this as well, but this was resoundingly supported in the House because we know we need urgency on this issue. And I bring this to you as a committee without requesting a committee waiver, because I think it's important for the Judiciary Committee for the Senate to hear this and understand why this was brought forward. And so I have a number of proponents today that can speak more to it, but I just want to make sure that I speak to CR 6015, the bridge back to a former bill, and I'm happy to stand by for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. For their proponent testimony.
Okay. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Larissa Strong. I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I graduated from Lincoln High School, Augustana University, and then I earned my MBA from Texas A&M, and I live in Texas now. I never imagined that I would be a part of this, standing at the Capitol and speaking about something like this, but here we are. Please bear with me as I go through a lot of information. I'll try to get through it as fast as possible. I'm here to speak about suicide prevalence in society, but primarily in our state of South Dakota, as well as the impact that lack of training and accountability of those responsible for our loved ones in their most acute mental health crises hurt our community and our families. Here we are in a war. It's not overseas, it's not between political parties, it's a war inside of our communities, and we are losing. According to the CDC, suicide is the second leading cause of death for Americans ages 10 to 34 and is in the top 9 cause of death for every age group from 10 to 64. Every year, hundreds of thousands of lives are lost, and the number keeps on rising. Mental illness is not rare, it is not abstract, it is devastating, and when untreated or inadequately protected against, it ends in suicide and violence. We cannot control every means of suicide. However, the federal law already speaks to it regarding the importance of NICS reporting. First of all was the Gun Control Act of 1968 under 18 U.S.C. 922 G4, prohibiting firearm access for individuals who are adjudicated as mentally defective or formally committed to a mental health institution. In 1993, the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act created the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, to enforce that prohibition. In 2008, Congress strengthened NICS reporting through the NICS Improvement Amendments Act, which was then and still is backed by the NRA. And since then, nothing. For nearly 2 decades, the law has not been meaningfully updated, despite overwhelming evidence that it is incomplete. So let's get back to talking about South Dakota. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death overall in our state. For ages 10 to 29, it is the leading cause of death. 10. If you have a child, look at them and ask yourself if you can imagine losing them at 10 years old or any age for that matter. And South Dakota consistently ranks in the top 10 states for suicide rates nationwide, and in recent years, we ranked 6th or 7th. In 2024, 80% of firearm deaths in South Dakota were from suicides in our state. Nationally, the number is only 56 to 60%, and this crisis hits rural communities the hardest, and every indicator from the CDC and Health and Human Services show it is getting worse and not any better. So the question is simple: how many lives must we lose before we act? And who am I to be speaking about this? And why should anyone care what I have to say about suicide and accountability? I mean, I'm guilty of not paying attention or knowing anything about suicide rates or training and accountability of health and legal professionals, nor county health boards, until it became personal. This is my daughter. Her name is Haley Rihanna Barrick. I lost Haley to suicide. She was 21 years old, only about a month and 9 days away from her 22nd birthday. Haley struggled with severe mental illness. I fought for, with, and against her in her mental health and illness struggles for her whole life, every way a mother knows how. She told everyone I was her best friend. On February 21st, 2024, Haley was released from behavioral health in Sioux Falls less than 24 hours after police placed her on a suicide watch, because South Dakota is one of the only states with no minimum hold time. Why? It was her 4th stay in 1 year. Her first admission followed an overdose of her anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. She took what was estimated 80 to 100 of them and was found by her boyfriend with a suicide note by the bed and had to call EMS to have her brought in and saved. Despite scoring the highest possible suicide risk based on the risk assessment questionnaire in the hospital, despite me begging the County Board of Mental Health to keep Haley for further help, despite Haley telling them truthfully that she thought about suicide multiple times a day and that she had a plan and that if she was given the opportunity, she would do it, Haley was never committed. She was instead stabilized from the overdose and discharged. Haley returned 3 more times for suicide watch. The day of her final admission, Haley was spiraling at the loss of an impending breakup with her boyfriend. Haley had taken a handful of her pills again, and in a rage, she destroyed a big screen TV, a glass table, all the photos in her home, leaving the glass shards all over her floor. She tried to asphyxiate herself and her Jeep and parked in her garage, and when her boyfriend got her out, she ran into the house where she was found in the bathroom, surrounded by blood and tissue because she had cut her wrist. She had taken the shards from the broken glass to do so and stated then she would get a gun. Her boyfriend called the police and she was brought into behavioral health, where she admitted to the doctor she would get a gun, and all of the events of that day had already been documented in the medical records. I have them. I've read every page. The County Board of Mental Health called loved ones to ask about Haley's mental stability to determine if she should be held longer. The board was told that she was not stable enough to come home. The county board was told that Haley would complete suicide if she was discharged and that she was in a bad way and she should not be let go. They were told Haley was not okay. Ultimately, she was released in less than 24 hours of this mental health crisis, even with past documented suicide risk and mental illness. Within 48 hours of her release, Haley walked into a local gun store, legally purchased a firearm and ammunition, called me, did not tell me her plan, and 1 hour after she hung up with me, she shot herself in the head. Haley did not die instantly. She lived 2 days in the ICU. She reacted to pain. She triggered the ventilator, trying to breathe on her own. I begged for God to let her live. I kissed her face, I held her hand, and I felt her fingers squeeze mine. On Friday, February 23rd, 2024, I watched the brain death testing of my beautiful daughter, her head wrapped in gauze from the gunshot wound. I watched as they opened her eyes, fixed, unmoving. I watched as they removed her from the ventilator, trying to get her to breathe on her own, which she never did. I watched my baby, who had been let go from the mental health institution just days before, where she should have been kept, watched, protected, stabilized. She was declared brain dead at 11:51 a.m. Haley should be turning 24 on March 30th in just 27 days from today. Instead, she is in an urn in my home and in this necklace that I wear every day. Why? because there was a gap between crisis and protection, because Haley was never committed despite repeated suicide attempts and ample documented risk, because our system stabilizes and releases but does not consistently protect during the most dangerous window. Shockingly, it's not unusual. Less than 30% of individuals that are ever placed on an involuntary suicide hold are ever formally committed, which leaves over 70% without adequate protection, despite being shown to be up to 300 times more likely to die by suicide in the weeks following discharge. That gap is where my daughter died. We need to ensure that the healthcare professionals that are in charge of caring for our loved ones continue to have a better understanding of the responsibility they have in the protection of our loved ones, that the people in our community during the most dangerous window of their illnesses are trusting them. It is about ensuring healthcare and legal professionals are trained, supported, and empowered to act during the most dangerous windows of the mental illnesses that people are suffering when impulsivity meets access to lethal means. We need to fully address the mental health crisis fueling this epidemic and give people like my daughter a chance to live. So I'll leave you with this. If suicide has not touched your family, it has touched someone that you do know. And if one day it is your daughter, your son, your spouse, your parent, or your best friend, would you want protection in place, or would you be left saying we should have done something sooner? I am taking the worst pain of my life and turning into purpose for all of the Haleys that are still there. Let's protect them before they become statistics. If this had existed 2 years ago, if we would have already done this study, if we would have found the gaps, my daughter may still be alive today. If we refuse to learn from preventable deaths like Haley's, then the next one and the next and the next will carry our silence with it. We need to ensure that healthcare and legal professionals are trained on the best practices and set them up to be successful in helping during mental health emergencies. If we do not, then the real failure is our willingness to ignore preventable deaths. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Further proponent testimony.
Chair, members of the committee, Alan Solano, removed my lobbyist badge testifying on my own behalf. If I could just recognize the family and their tragedy and certainly give my condolences. Just maybe a bit of background why I chose to testify. Part of that was I spent about 26 years working in the community mental health system in various administrative positions. So certainly I've seen oftentimes these tragedies play out. And then also in 2019, I was on the summer study where we looked at mental illness statutes. That summer study was very focused on things such as looking at the crisis support services, and in particular, redefining and creating appropriate regional facilities in South Dakota to serve people experiencing a mental health crisis. And I think to date, those facilities have been successful in serving people in or as close to home as possible. Prior to that, we were pretty much sending everybody across the state of South Dakota. But the reality is in 2019, we did not address the jurisdictional issues, the petitioning process, or the county mental health board responsibilities. Concurrent Resolution 615 will bring forward this very needed review. And portions of Chapter 27A, which is the chapter of law that really addresses these services and the involuntary commitment of mentally ill people. With that, I would encourage your support of HCR 6015, and I will stand by for questions. Thank you.
Thank you for their proponent testimony. It looks like we have just a few minutes left, so we'll try to keep it to Me Too's and additional information from here on out. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name's Terry Dash. I serve as the Executive Director of the South Dakota Council of Community Behavioral Health. I represent the community mental health centers that serve our state, also some comprehensive alcohol and drug treatment facilities. we rise in support of the proposition of conducting this study. As Mr. Solano just said, it has been a while since we took a serious look at a very large chunk of statute, which has been around for a long, long time. And as I visited with Representative Mucky about how such a study should spin and shape, I felt very strongly that it wouldn't make sense for a limited study to take a look at the morass of 27A. Rather, it makes most sense to take a look at the roles, functions, authorities, and responsibilities of boards of mental illness. The boards of mental illness operate in a highly variable manner across our state, and I think that streamlining the work that they do to the degree that we can is in order, both for in the interest of serving public safety, but also in preserving individual rights. It always pains me a great deal to realize, well, my center probably does most of the evaluations for involuntary commitments in the state. And it pains me to know that for people to get the help that they need, we sometimes have to deprive them of their civil rights to do that. So something that finds the sweet tipping point between the preservation of our civil liberties and public safety, to me, makes a great deal of sense. And that's why we suggested to Representative Mucky that this would be probably the most viable way to dissect this frog. And so I would just end my comments there. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony in the room.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Cole Euchre. I'm with Disability Rights South Dakota. We rise in support of this bill. The nature and the landscape of mental health services is fast changing, and that is also the case here in South Dakota. The demand, the needs, the resources surrounding mental health services is also changing. And I think from time to time, and maybe past time at this point, the laws that govern those services need to be looked at to make sure that they're in alignment with the needs of the people that it serves and the resources that are being utilized and the practices that are being utilized around those vital services. Now, a summer study is a really important way to do that. The previous testifier mentioned about civil rights, balancing those civil rights. It's a good chance that during a summer study, should there be one impaneled, that my organization might disagree with some of the approaches, might agree with some of those approaches, but that's the importance, that's the value of having that study to look at and to hammer out different points of view. And I know that a summer study was held this last year for the DD services, and that was a highly valuable and productive use of time. And so I would hope and ask that this committee support this resolution, and we can take a deep dive into the services that are so important for families and individuals here in our state.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony in the room. Seeing none, we'll go online. No proponent testimony online for this one. Okay, well, we'll move on to opponent testimony then. Any opponent testimony in the room? Seeing none, is there any opponents online? All right, well then we will close the taking of public testimony and move on to committee questions. Any questions from the committee? Senator Pischke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Representative Mucky, Representative, I believe you probably are aware that there is a process that we take for doing summer studies every year. And, you know, your title here says encouraging the executive board to basically take up this study. So I'm assuming that you still understand that even if this passes or doesn't pass, this is something that we can do. Would you like to respond to that?
Madam Chair, I may. Yes, understanding both, I intend to pursue it regardless of the outcome of today.
Follow up to that? I haven't listened to what the discussion was on the House floor. There was obviously some no votes. Was that the discussion and why some of the no votes came? Was that there is another process for doing these summer studies?
Madam Chair, without anything brought to the floor, Senator, nothing was brought to me explicitly. I know there were a few folks who said, yeah, we don't like summer studies. There was no real discussion on the floor against it from that end, so I didn't get a full answer as to why. My understanding, though, from those who informally said it, yes, summer study summer study process was one of the reasons why they might have voted no.
Any further questions from the committee? Madam Chair. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question for Ellen Solano. You mentioned at the end there the like 3 things that needed to be addressed. I caught the one addressing jurisdictional issues, but could you tell me the other ones?
Yeah, Madam Chair. Thank you for the question. Yeah, jurisdictional issues is one of those. Just the petitioning process is important, and how long those petitions or a hold stays in place. How do we move people around is important. And then as it relates to the county boards of mental illness responsibilities, and I think Mr. Dosh really kind of highlighted that. You'll see kind of a pretty wide variety of how those boards operate across the state.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? Senator Blanc.
I have a quick question, Mr. Solano. I'm sorry, I should have helped you not have to get all your steps in today.
Believe me, I need them.
My question is similar to my good senator here to my left. I'm sorry, ma'am, I forgot your Haley's mom. Can I just call you? What was the last name? Larissa Strong. Thank you. Did she testify before any of the other committees?
Madam Chair. Yes, I don't want to speak for the family, but in the bill, bill that was brought, that Representative Mucky had done, yeah.
Madam Chair, could Representative Mucky answer that? I'm sorry, I should have probably asked him. Thank you, Representative Mucky.
Absolutely, Madam Chair. Representative Eric Mucky, yes. Larissa has testified previously on House Bill 1114 and House Judiciary, as well as on the CR and House Judiciary as well.
Any further questions, Senator Blanc?
No, thank you.
All right, seeing no further questions from the committee, we'll move on to discussion and or action. Discussion and or action. Don't everyone speak at once.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Grove.
So I guess first of all, I mean, I can see where it definitely helps when you're setting up interim committees to have people come and share, their why, because you can connect with that, and this is certainly something that one can connect with. I am concerned, however, that we are subverting we're messing with the process. I think that it's probably best to go that, in the way that the proper procedures are. And I don't know, I can't say whether, the e-board is going to say yes or no to this, but I feel like I don't want to tie anybody's hands either, because I don't know what else is coming. I think this is a really prevalent issue, and my guess is that they would be very interested in it. Who knows? But I do think that we should probably honor the system in the way that it's set up. That's, I guess, just my comment.
Any other discussion or action?
Madam Chair.
Senator Melhoff.
I'd recommend do pass.
Second.
So we have a do pass motion from Senator Melhoff and a second from Senator Duhamel. Discussion on your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, there is a process in place for selecting summer study topics, but a process similar to this is not unique or unheard of in the past, and it certainly does not compel us to take this up, but it encourages us, and having sat as a legislative standing committee and taking the testimony that we took today, I think could lend a strong voice to a recommendation to move forward with this summer study. So I would encourage you to support the motion.
Senator Duhamel.
I would say the same thing. Absent information, this potentially wouldn't bubble up to the top where people are recognizing how big a problem it is. And, potentially on the floor, people could still vote it down, but we're educating all along the way. And it's certainly something people need to understand. It's a topic that really does need to be addressed, and maybe it wouldn't be as political as many of the other summer studies, and we'd actually accomplish something.
Any other discussion? Senator Kolbach.
Yeah, I'm going to resist the motion. I wish it was a task force and not a summer study. I don't know if we're actually going to give it the weight that it needs on the summer study. Plus, being on the executive board, I know that we try to not do these concurrent resolutions, and we can all certainly put it as one of our top items, but I'm going to resist the motion. Obviously not that it's a telling topic or something that we should be talking about. We've dealt with some pretty heavy topics this year in this committee. And in fact, this subject, I just don't know if this is the right avenue, so I'm going to resist the motion.
Well, I'm just going to take a second to explain just for the public kind of what's happening, and also for, I think, some of the folks in the room that gave very, very compelling testimony. And so summer studies are approved by essentially a voting system that we use. And so there have been other HCRs of similar types that we've voted down this legislative session on other very valid topics as well. And so some of the members of the legislature feel that if you vote on something like this and then we pass something like this and then we don't actually approve the summer study topic, that it just doesn't look good in process. And so that's what we're debating up here and talking about. I think all of us sitting up here agree that this needs to be studied, and the mention of a task force, that's even a heightened level of studying something to create a task force. And so I think I might be resisting the motion as well today, but not to say that it doesn't need to be a summer study. Like, the vote no on this HCR doesn't mean that I don't agree that it needs to be a summer study. So just wanted to clarify that. Any other discussion?
Madam Chair.
Senator Blanc.
The reason that I had asked if Larissa had testified before, because she represents a lot of moms, and it makes an impact. It's taking it off of just reading words on a bill and reminding us that these are real people that we're talking about. And I know that we're talking about process here, and I'm usually not one. Yeah, I'm a rule-keeping guy. I try to be. Yet our leader, Mr. Leader, said that it wasn't out of, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it's been done before. Wasn't going to say it's out of the ordinary, but it's been done before. And I don't think something like this should be delayed if our state has not been proactive enough in doing everything we can. I think that we should do, at least it brings the discussion, whether the summer study or whether the task force decides now is the time to do it, but at least let's continue the discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right. Further discussion on the motion do pass. Senator Pischke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I just wanted to say, I don't think anybody's really said this. My condolences to you, ma'am. I understand exactly where you are. My mother actually lost a sibling, not to the same situation, but lost a sibling, and she understands, and I understand losing. She lost a child. I lost a sibling, and so I understand the pain that you're going through. And so I just wanted to tell you that, and I just offer my condolences, and I offer you. I'll keep you in my prayers. I hope that you will get better over time, and I know you will. And I continue to pray for you. In regards to the bill, I guess I'm kind of on the same line as Senator Kolbach, is that I do think that there is a process that we should go through. I do appreciate having the conversation, and I do think that it is worthy of the study, but I think it should just happen during that process that we take. And I appreciate having the conversation here, and I think it was something that would rise to the top, but I just don't think that this is the right path. So I think I'll be not supporting the motion. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no further discussion on the motion do pass. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Blanc.
Aye.
Duhamel.
Aye.
Grove.
No.
Melhoff.
Aye.
Pischke. No. Hulse.
No.
Colbeck.
No.
Madam Chairman, we have 3 ayes, 4 nays.
All right. After failing to receive a majority of the members elect, the do pass motion fails. So we're looking for a subsequent motion.
I would make a motion to the 41st day.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion by Senator Pischke, 41st day, seconded by Senator Colbeck. Discussion on that motion at all? No discussion. Any other discussion? Okay. So the motion is moved to the 41st day. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. Secretary, call the roll.
Senator Blanc.
No.
Duhamel.
No.
Grove.
Aye.
Melhoff.
Nope.
Pischke. Hulse.
Aye.
Colbeck.
Aye.
Madam Chairman, we have 4 ayes, 3 nays.
All right. After receiving a majority of the members elect, the motion to the 41st day motion passes. And House HCR 6015 will be moved to the 41st day. Okay, moving on to House Bill 1176, which is clarifying bond or pretrial release upon sobriety program participation. Proponent testimony.
Good afternoon, Senator, Chair, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. I am Representative Puri Puyer, District 27. Colleagues, today I'm presenting you House Bill 1176. 1176 is a narrow, practical fix about how we use the 24/7 sobriety program as a condition of bond and pre-release. It keeps the program intact, but it makes sure that we are not jailing people because they are poor. So current law allows courts to condition bond on the 24/7 participation and payment of fees, but it is not clear what happens when somebody simply cannot afford those fees. HB 1176 says 2 things very clearly. First, a person cannot be jailed and their bond or pre-trial release cannot be revoked for failure to pay 24/7 costs unless the court finds that they have the present and continued ability to pay. Second, the defendant can show they did not willfully fail to pay or that they made a bondified effort to pay. And any unpaid costs can be imposed later at disposition if the court then finds an ability to pay. So, confession time, I'm not an attorney. You already know that, but even though I'm not an attorney, the lawyers on this committee will recognize the constitutional framework. The U.S. Supreme Court in Bearden versus Georgia held that before the state can lock somebody up for failure to pay a fine or restitution, the court must ask why. Why did they not pay? If a person willfully refused or did not make a bona fide effort, incarceration is allowed. If they genuinely could not pay despite reasonable efforts, the state cannot simply jail them for being poor. They must look at alternatives. That principle has been extended to fines, fees, and costs attached to supervision and release conditions more generally. House Bill 1176 takes the federal standard and writes it into our statute for the 24/7 program. Judges keep full discretion to order 24/7 and require payment when someone can afford it. What they cannot do under this bill is use non-payment alone without finding the ability to pay in the willfulness. as the reason to send someone back to jail. From a policy standpoint, this protects public safety by reserving jail for people who are truly dangerous or a flight risk, not people who are just simply broke. It reduces our exposure to civil rights litigation and gives clear guidance to judges, prosecutors, defense, and sheriffs on how to handle non-payment in a constitutional and workable way. House Bill 1176 keeps 24/7 strong. It codifies a well-established Supreme Court standard on the ability to pay and willfulness, and ensures South Dakota is not operating in a modern debtor's prison around program fees. I respectfully ask for your support and a do pass recommendation. This bill passed unanimously in House Judiciary and unanimously on the House floor. And I do have a proponent online. Thank you. Well, he's literally waiting online, so I don't know. Well, he rearranged. It's just unfortunate because he rearranged his whole schedule because we went to the afternoon.
If we take a recess, we could try and get it to work. Do you have are there any other proponent testifiers in the room? Let's take the proponent testifiers in the room while we work on the tech issue, and then hopefully by the time that they're done, if we have to take recess, we will, but hopefully we'll get that resolved in the meantime.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Cash Anderson, registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. I'm a lawyer here in town. We rise in support of this measure. I think, and this has been covered in the media, but this probably sprouted out of a lawyer in the western part of the state. Found a plaintiff to sue this out and argued unconstitutionality. And I think our association got up when this law was put into place, saying that jailing someone for inability to pay would not work, and that was kind of proven right. And that case is the looking back case, ultimately ended in a settlement. I did not print off the settlement. It is quite long, but the language does seem to mirror the settlement from that case. And I think here it's just pretty clear. It's unconstitutional to jail someone on an inability to pay, and that's wrong. And it strikes me as wrong and violative of the Constitution. This does not absolve that defendant from ever having to pay it back. They're still responsible for it, and that bill still captures that. So we think that this is a good change. I think this is something smart to do, and I think this can avoid litigation going forward for the state, and it's a common sense bill. So I would ask you to support it. Thank you.
Further proponent testimony.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm Steve Siegel, and I'm the registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Trial Lawyers Association. Like Mr. Anderson, we too rise in support of House Bill 1176. I'm certainly no constitutional law expert, but as I look at this, I do think it strikes me as being unconstitutional when somebody is innocent until proven guilty, right, in South Dakota and America. And the fact that you can jail somebody for their inability to pay for this test, I think is unconstitutional. And so I hope you'll support this, and I thank you.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony in the room? All right.
Yep. We're gonna. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take testimony potentially through the phone. So we're going to hold up the phone to the microphone here and do it the old school way. So
We're South Dakota and we do what we have.
Ingenuity here.
Here we go. Okay, I'm going to put you on speaker then, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to put you on speakerphone and then you'll be at the mic. Ready?
Just make sure he introduces
go.
himself.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me today?
Yes.
My name is Jim Leach. I'm the Rapid City lawyer who brought the class action lawsuit on behalf of people in Pennington County who were jailed or threatened with jail because they didn't have enough money to pay their 24/7 fees. Just threatening people with jail was enough to get a lot of them not to show up. And so they were violated for not showing up when the real reason was because they did not have the money. I am a proponent of this bill for 3 reasons. First, it's right. England in Charles Dickens' time had debtors' prisons. That didn't make any sense. We should not have debtors' prisons. Putting people in jail because they're extremely poor is wrong, and it's counterproductive to try and help people get out of poverty. Second is the law as established by a number of United States Supreme Court cases, and any county that does not follow it is subject to getting sued and having to pay the plaintiff's attorney's fees, just as Pennington County will have to pay my fees. And third, any decisions about whether a person actually has the money to pay and just chooses not to pay, or in fact is too poor to pay, should be made by judges, not 24/7 employees. Due process of law explicitly protects liberty. The 14th Amendment protects life, liberty, and property. Due process means that judges make decisions about liberty, not government employees. Allowing government employees to make decisions about liberty and freedom is a terrible practice that we should get rid of. Thank you.
Did you get his name and everything?
Yes. Did we get his name okay? Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your ingenuity and working with us on that. All right. Any further proponent testimony in the room? Seeing none, do we have any opponent testimony in the room? Seeing none, we will move on. Oh, we do have? Oh, okay. We're doing neutral testimony now. Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Grant Flynn from the South Dakota Attorney General's Office, and I can assure you that I am as sort of confused and uncomfortable about this type of testimony as you guys are, I have no doubt. The Attorney General's Office does not oppose the content or the concept of this legislation, nor do we debate or disagree with the legal representations that have been made by the proponents of this bill. Here's the crux of our problem. 24/7 is a great program, and I don't think there's anybody here that would say that it's not a great program. And the reason that it's great is because it accomplishes 2 things. It allows people to not have to sit in a cell while they await trial. They can be with their families. They can go to work. They can continue to live their productive lives while they address this mistake that they made. But we can also ensure that we're maintaining our public safety by checking in with these folks and making sure that they're not continuing to participate in the dangerous behaviors that got them in front of the court in the first place. Here's the problem. This program is offender supported. It's supported through the payments of these, I guess I'm not sure what we would even call them, but costs, the cost to administer the program and the cost to participate in the program. I think it's also very important to recognize this is voluntary. No defendant ever has to participate in the 24/7 program. They can simply sit in county jail and await their day in court. This is a discretionary thing that they can choose to participate in that, again, allows them to be outside of a jail cell and continue to live their lives. So with that sort of meandering preamble out of the way, this is the reason that I sit here before you today. What we are asking for this committee to do is to refer this bill to the Appropriations Committee to determine, one, will it continue to be viable even if we don't have these guarantees of the offender pay under, that exists under this statute? And two, If there are concerns about that, or if it might not continue to be financially viable, is there a way that we can appropriate some money to this program so that we know that it continues while we sort through these constitutional issues? I will tell you in all honesty, the state's attorneys, the Attorney General's office, the Sheriff's office, we have been having a lot of conversations about this bill. In fact, we reached out to former Attorney General, I believe retired Judge Long, who who was sort of the father of this program. It was his brainchild. We represented this to him. He said, again, as far as the law was concerned, my impression from those conversations is that he agreed that this is probably the way this needs to, this needs to be set up. But we just worry that if the offender pay part of it is weakened, then is the program not going to be able to continue? And so therein lies our concern. And so again, I want to be very clear, we don't oppose the content or the concept. We just want to make sure that this isn't an unknowing fatal blow to the program. And with all these groups who've gotten together to have this conversation, what we've concluded is that we're not 100% sure what the impact is going to be. We don't know how this is going to play out over the next few years, and we would just hate to see this program deflate because we've not shorn up the funding for it at the same time that we've accommodated for these legal and constitutional concerns. So again, for the purposes of explicit clarity, the Attorney General's office does not oppose this bill. We don't oppose the concept or the analysis behind it. We just are asking for help to make sure that the program can keep going and that we can keep the streets safe while continuing to keep people living their day-to-day lives. Thank you.
Thank you for your neutral testimony. Another neutral testifier.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee member Stacy Ackerman, Executive Director for the South Dakota Sheriff's Association. I'm going to do something a little dangerous, go off my talking points, because I made the mistake of sharing them with Mr. Flynn, and he pretty much took them all. But if I could just reaffirm why we're here today. In the discussion over this, I gave the analogy to Mr. Flynn. I said, it's felt like I've been a ball inside a pinball machine, because it's just, the discussions have been all over the place. We don't know how this is going to impact us. Like he said, this was originally set up as an offender pay. We don't disagree with some of the things that the proponents have said, but if it does come back down to nobody is paying until it gets all the way through the court process, how do we fund this and pay it at the local level at a time when we've been trying to stay out of the property tax debate up here, because let you guys decide what to do there. But if property taxes are reduced and we have to cut services, what services are we going to cut? We don't know that. So we felt when the idea of sending this and referring it to appropriations came up, we felt that was the best remedy for this bill at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Further neutral testimony. Mr. Erickson.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Eric Erickson with the State's Attorneys Association. I think Mr. Flynn and Ms. Ackerman put it together well. Our folks think this is a good and valuable program, and it's something that they want to make sure is sustainable and can continue into the future. I know we've seen some challenges with it, with just demands on law enforcement and those things, so I think that additional discussion is good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further testimony in the room? Seeing none. All right, we're going to move on to committee questions. Senator Colbeck.
Yes, for Mr. Siegel. As the defense attorneys, I've got 3 questions. Is that all right? Sure. First of it, how much are we talking here? How much is one person to go through this program? Hundreds, thousands?
Madam Chair, I'm Steve Siegel. I'm the registered lobbyist for the South Dakota Trial Lawyers Association. It's each time somebody goes in to blow for alcohol, Steve, I believe it's $1 each time you go in and blow. and it's typically in the morning and at night. And then for the drug tests, I believe it's $10. And I'm sure that the state's attorneys would probably be better at that than I. But I think it's $1 each time you blow for alcohol, and it's $10 when you go in for the drug test.
Okay. And then the second, have you ever, or anyone in your organization, have you ever had someone who wants to get in this program, but they haven't because they can't afford it?
Madam Chair, no. Not in my practice. I haven't seen anybody. And if I may say, if I may have a little attitude here, when this program first came out, and Judge Long did formulate it, like Grant said, I thought, what is the deal with this program? I mean, it's unconstitutional. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. I've kind of come full circle on that. I've got to be a little careful what I say here, but I've had clients, honestly, that they cannot stop drinking unless they're on 24/7. And so it really, in some cases, it is a valuable thing to have, and I don't disagree with what Grant said. I mean, it is a good program. Now, I think he said people would have to sit in jail until trial. Well, most of these, if not all of them, would have the ability to post bond, and get out of jail before trial. So I don't think they're all going to sit in jail. Now, we're talking about people, of course, a lot of times don't have any money either. But anyway, I've never heard of anybody that wanted to be in the program that wasn't able to get into the program.
My last question is Mr. Flynn.
Don't look so excited, Mr. Flynn.
Madam Chair, I was just going to say that given my last statement, I can't imagine that you think there's a question I can answer, but I will do my best.
I know that you cheated off Ms. Ackerman's homework, so.
I got to get by somehow.
Yes. So if we send this to appropriations, Mr. Flynn, is it your suggestion, because you want it to go to appropriations, that this would come out of the Attorney General's budget? Is that what you're saying?
No. That is absolutely the opposite of what I'm saying. And the reason that I say that is because, again, from the conception of this program, when it was first put into place by A.G. Long, it was meant to be offender funded. And that was why it was so attractive to everybody here, because it gave them an opportunity, but it also gave them skin in the game. You had to put up something up front to make sure that you were going to be compliant with what the requirements were that the judge put in place. And so it didn't cost anything for us, because the folks who were participating in the program were the ones who were paying for it. Now, again, are there, there might be some issues there, and admittedly, I've not had the opportunity to fully delve into the research. I'm not familiar with the Pennington County case, the specific arguments that are put forth. I mean, generally, but nothing that I could cite to this committee today. But no part of this has ever come out of the Attorney General's budget, and certainly I don't think that we're in a position that we would be able to absorb it fully now. And that's exactly why, and I know that I'm not giving you a solid answer, but the question marks are exactly why we think this step is important. We would like the folks who, I testified in front of the Appropriations Committee the other day, and I said that the reason that this is the first time you've ever seen me is because numbers make my brain hurt, and that's why I went to law school. I'm not the right person to try to balance this and to try to understand what the fiscal impact is. That's why we would like the experts, the appropriators, the folks who do address the numbers, to take a look at this and say, hey, the AG's office is wrong. This is going to be fine. It's, it's still going to be sustainable even if we have this, even if we pass this statute. Or, you know what, this could create some kind of shortfall within the program, and then maybe we need to be looking through the budget to find that some money that can shore that up. But I don't see a way conceivably that the Attorney General's office could just absorb this. If the offenders aren't going to be paying for it, either because we choose to not have that as the policy or because the Constitution simply doesn't allow it, if we want to keep having 24/7, it's got to be supported from somewhere. Thank you.
Madam
Chair. Senator Grove.
I'd like to ask Representative, the prime sponsor, a question. Madam Chair. Do you have any information regarding the questions that they're asking with cost and the potential for if this could cause a problem where we wouldn't have enough money to cover the program?
Madam Chair, Representative Puri-Puyer in District 27. Just my core, not the state of South Dakota, but in the course of my research, there was an article published, South Dakota Searchlight, dated January 18th, 2026, updated January 20th. The participation price varies based on the type of monitoring involved and how long a person takes part. Some people pay $2 a day for breath testing, while others pay others pay $30 to $42 a week for urinalysis drug testing or alcohol monitoring bracelets. Judges also permit participants to shift from one method to another along the way to better suit their financial or life circumstances. Some people remain on the program for weeks or months, and occasionally for a year or more, depending on how long it takes for their case to work its way through the court system. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just
Yep,
one
go ahead, Senator
follow-up?
Grove.
Don't leave. Madam Chair. So in your bill, if I understand properly, you're saying that for these ongoing, participating in this program in an ongoing manner, and they're coming up against $20 or $30 or $40 per day, where maybe it's twice a day even, I guess, if they have to do that twice a day. Are you saying that the charge for that individual, they would have to prove that they can't pay it right now, but then at the end, whatever they can pay, if they can, then they need to pay into the system? Is that kind of the main goal?
Thank you, Chair. The way I understand it, and I spoke to several lawyers throughout this whole process, is that if they say, so they come and they get tested and then they pay. If it's twice a day, then they come, get tested, and pay. The way that this is set up to be is, and the way that lawyers have told me is, they would, if somebody cannot pay, then they would have to have a hearing to investigate why they cannot pay. They'll have to show if they have the ability to pay or if they don't. So there will be a couple steps involved, but they have to, constitutionally, you have to ask why, and they have to prove that they cannot.
Madam Chair, just one quick follow-up. So if I don't have the $80 a day or $60 a day because I have to go in twice a day, I cannot participate in the program because I can't pay. Am I then go back into county, or what's kind of that process?
So I don't know if, since this lawsuit, I'm not sure what the counties have amended their process. I was told that the counties have already amended their process. But so if you cannot pay, then by this bill, it's supposed to put it in your court costs at the end. So if they prove they cannot pay, you do not incarcerate them, you just put them in the court costs at the end. And I've been told that the counties amended their procedures, and this just codifies it in law. That's what I've been told. But but before this lawsuit, if you couldn't pay, they revoked you and you went into incarceration. But with this bill, you have to prove that you're not willfully not paying. If that makes.
Senator Melhoff, I believe you had some questions down there.
Thank you. I have a question for Ms. Ackerman. So I think we've learned the process that if you come in and you can't pay the $1 or the $10 for the bull or the test, that you go to jail. How much does it cost to hold somebody in jail for a day?
Madam Chair, Senator Melhoff, it varies by county, but anywhere from $95 a day to $120 a day. But I will say, if you're coming in on a DUI, like was previously testified, you have the option to post bond. So those that can post bond are posting bond. If you can't, if you don't have the money to post bond, I started my career working in a jail, so I'm coming at you from my experience in the 90s, if you will. But you go to court the next day, and as long as you aren't showing that you're a flight risk, you'd probably get a PR bond the next day, so.
Thank you.
As long as Mrs. Ackerman is on there, just quickly, because I think the costs are what somebody's saying $60 or $80 a day. It's $1 or $2 per occurrence, max of 2 or 4 a day if you were doing these breath tests. It's not these big numbers that somehow.
Madam Chair? So those are the costs to PBT. It's $1 per PBT, and I think the Scram bracelet's $8 a day if you're on the Scram. But where the costs are coming in that we have concerns about is the staffing that goes into the monitoring of those things, which is the money brings in some revenue to help support those things. And I believe the Attorney General's office has a 24/7 grant that also can help with the staffing costs. So that's what we're worried about, not having those funds anymore to fund the staffing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you think this program is threatened by not having offender pay and making this move? Do you think, what is the future of the 24/7 sobriety program?
Madam Chair? That's exactly why I use the pinball in a ball in a pinball machine analogy, because that's where our conversations have been all over the place. It's how is this going to impact our county? Are we going, because it is up to the sheriff to decide if they are going to offer the program or not. And if we lose revenues, both at, through the offender pay and through property taxes, what services are we going to have to eliminate? And so that's the big struggle. I mean, we've been all over the place with this conversation. And so, yes, we do feel there are some that said we may no longer offer the 24/7 program.
I have a question. And so I want to clarify and kind of bring us back to what we're talking about here. So it's not that these folks would never pay. No, they would never pay if they get, I'm just confused as if this is a kickstart funding problem, like as if, eventually you will get the money, or if this is an ongoing problem where these offenders will never actually end up paying for it? Or can they continue to still be on the program, but then they can just show that they're unable to pay for it? I'm just a little confused on that front.
Madam Chair. So I will try to answer that question, because this is still a new area of knowledge for me. But as I understand it, currently on the program, with the outcomes of the lawsuits that have occurred, if an offender is unable to pay currently today, they do submit paperwork to the courts that the person is in violation of their bond conditions, because that was part of, and then it goes to the court. The judge does a review, and the judge may ask for them to come into court and maybe give them a scolding, and then if they continue to not, the sheriff may decide to take them off the 24/7 program, and then they'll notify the attorneys and the courts of that. So they may just be terminated from the 24/7 program for non-payment currently.
But under this bill, if this bill was the law, and they were to demonstrate in that hearing that I want to continue to be on 24/7, but I just can't afford it, what would the outcome be then? Would they then pay the cost on the back end side of after their whole case has been heard, or would they just never pay because they've shown that they're indigent and they can't pay for the service, but they want to keep being in the program?
Madam Chair, I think one of two things could happen is if this bill passes as written and they're not paying, then the sheriff may just decide that he or she is not going to do 24/7 period at all. If the program has gotten to be such a cost burden to them that they can't manage it, so they may choose to not do it for anybody. On the other side, if they continue to do it, yes, I think at the back end after conviction, they can go after them and recoup the costs after they've been convicted, is my understanding. But oftentimes we don't see those funds get recouped, so.
Can I ask that question to maybe Mr. Erickson from the county side of things, like how that potentially could work given if this bill does pass?
Good afternoon again, Eric Erickson with the State's Attorneys Association. I think you've summarized it well, that yes, there'd be the opportunity to go after that offender for those costs. But I think one of the challenges we've seen in reality is often with those same offenders, you'd also have court-appointed attorney costs on top of this. We've looked over the last number of years on, are there other ways to pursue those costs, such as like the Obligation Recovery Center. If you remember, I think we had that bill 3-4 years in a row and failed consistently anyway. And so that's part of the challenge. Is historically this has been an offender-funded program. If this expands to a greater extent or some type of extent, we're dealing with some unknowns, honestly. That's the concern, is those costs never would be recouped, and you run into those challenges. And so when we look at those offender costs, I think that was a good point of, with the PBT, it's $2 a day. I think bracelets, $42 a week is my understanding. And then there's other ones that are more narcotics-based, such as a patch that's worn every 2 weeks, that's $50 and those type of things. That some of that adds up or changes in that. But again, I think it's a valuable program, right? It does keep some folks out of jail. It does try and keep them in the workforce and those kind of things. It's just the ongoing viability. And on top of those fixed costs, of course, you have the staff time, those type of things.
What I'm trying to figure out, and I guess this is my question that I'm left with, is that right now, the people unable to pay, so the population that we're talking about is very small. And right now, the people that are unable to pay are kicked off the program. Right now, if the bill were to be put into place, if we were to continue down this line here, the people that are unable to pay and are basically kicked off the program, put in jail, would still be on the program. And so the gap of costs that we're talking about is how to fund the services for people who we're not currently servicing. I'm just trying to identify where that gap is, or what the gap is necessarily. We're essentially talking about allowing services for a population of people who right now would be not getting those services because they would be removed from the program because they are unable to pay and are jailed. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, yes, that would be my understanding. And there's a bit of, going back to Mr. Flynn's math problems, there's a bit of an X factor there, because we look at the settlement that's been referenced, and I wasn't involved, I'm not privy to the facts, nor do I know when that occurred, is I think that X factor is a bit of an unknown. We don't know how many folks we think would claim that inability to pay when we're looking at that $2 a day. And I think one of the concerns the sheriffs have brought up is that that may be an expanding pool of folks and causing issues there. So apologies that I'm kind of answering your question with a question, but it's because I just don't have the facts.
All right, any other questions from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Senator Grove.
I'm wondering if I could ask a question to Mr. Dosh. You don't know anything about it? Are you sure?
You could ask Mrs. Ackerman.
Madam Chair, Terry Dosh, Council of Community Behavioral Health. Well, my treatment programs operate hand in glove with 24/7. And so I can affirm that it's a very powerful program. As you might envision, a person staying sober really accentuates the success of treatment and vice versa. However, my members don't administer the program. It's administered by law enforcement, with maybe one exception, and that would be in Rapid City. One of my members is the Pennington County Sheriff's Office addiction training or addiction treatment services out there, and I think that they administer 24/7 on behalf of the county. But I don't have any idea what the delta is that's being questioned here either.
Yeah.
I would just add that my experience not having this program available to people, hearkening back to what Senator Melhoff asked about the cost of incarceration and failure of treatment, is something to consider too. Sorry, I can't answer your question directly.
Yeah, I guess my question is how, okay, so if a person has to do this on a daily basis, going 1 or 2 times a day, is the $2 or the $6, which some of these are the very cheap, the cheap ones, is that really a difficult thing for people to pay? Is that a struggle when you first have to go into the system? Do you know anything about that portion?
Well, the services that we largely provide, I doubt that some people would be able to afford if they had to pay for them, but they're eligible because of their indigency for the treatment services that we provide. I can see, have you ever heard the saying before, it's not the boulders that block your path, it's the sand in your shoes that slows you down? And this could be a very clear barrier to me.
All right, any further questions from the committee? Senator Pischke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask this broadly, and one of the proponents can come up and answer. So, obviously, I think there's some validity of the program. There's no doubt there. But has there been any discussion about the idea that for these people that cannot pay, and they've proven to the court that they cannot pay, then that would be noted, and then there would be a fund set up at the state level, just like we do the fire suppression fund, that can backfill to the counties the money that they have suffered. And so that way they remain whole, and we're not suffering any property tax levy damage. And so we cover all the fronts. Has there been any discussion about that?
Very valid question, Senator Pischke.
Once in a while I have a good idea. Actually, I have good ideas all the time. Just ask Siegel.
Yeah, point of order. All right.
Madam Chair.
Representative Poyer.
I like what you're thinking, but there hasn't been any discussion. And I'm not faulting anyone by no means, but the other proponents have just found out that this could be an issue, so they wanted to bring it up to the attention. So this hasn't been a discussion because this has been unanimously flying through the chambers. But thank you.
Well, just a comment. I think that's what we need to look at. I think that we need to have a fund to backfill to make the counties whole, so we don't suffer the property tax damage. And then there needs to be a process that makes sure that these people legitimately cannot pay. For the people that can pay, we need to just remain the same. Sorry,
Great.
That's not a question, but a comment.
No, it's okay. I think we should move into committee discussion and or action if that's possible. I think Senator Pischke kicked us off there on that. So is there any discussion and or action from the committee?
Madam Chair,
Senator Duhamel.
I would move to pass this to appropriations to start that conversation, because I think that is the answer. It is a great program. There is skin in the game. It is offender pay. But some counties will choose not to do this, I'm convinced, if they have to offset the costs. Right now, to my knowledge, post-Supreme Court ruling, no one is going to jail because they can't pay. It's going back to the judge to decide what to do. It is a voluntary program, so there are other options. If someone is truly indigent and there is no stick, there may be no reason that they ever do the program anyway. They may not show up because they don't have to pay, and there's no stick. There's no reason to come in and get tested twice a day for the $1 a test. So I just think there's a lot, and maybe this is the perfect summer study, but I don't think codifying what just happened before we understand what we're going to do, if anything, to save this really great offender pay program. And it's part of why it went through and has worked so well all these years, was that the taxpayer didn't feel like they were footing the bill on this. And it wasn't pushed on counties that you have to do this, whether you get paid or not.
All right. Any other discussion? Was that a motion, Senator Duhamel? Okay.
If possible, a motion to move this to joint appropriations.
Would you refer to appropriations, and would you like to refer it with a do pass recommendation or just refer with no recommendation?
I would not put do pass as is. I would make it no recommendation, so they can figure out how to fund it, if anything.
Is there any other?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion to refer to the Appropriations Committee with Senate Appropriations with no recommendation, made by Senator Duhamel, seconded by Senator Pischke. Is there any other discussion on that motion? Senator Colbeck.
I'm probably going to resist the motion only because I think it should be a due pass. I think we're tripping over fives and pick up ones here. I don't know if the money value, when you're talking, I mean, how poor does someone have to be to not be afforded $2 a day? So I struggle with that part. Plus the cost of incarceration, plus all of that is so much more. So I hope that appropriations does the right thing if it comes out of here. Otherwise, I'll probably do a due pass motion.
Would you like to make a subsequent motion, Mr. Colbeck? Okay. I would just say that I think I agree. I would like to send this to appropriations with a due pass recommendation because I think it's a good fix, and I want to send the message to them that we had a positive view of this bill in this committee, not that it was a bad view of what's going on here, especially since we're asking them to set up a whole nother fund and potentially, you know, an expenditure that they didn't expect this late in the game. And so I would like to send it with a due pass, but is there anyone out there that agrees with me at all?
I
Any
would
other
like to
others?
make a subsequent motion. Substitute motion. A referral to appropriations with a due pass.
All right, so we have a subsequent motion to do pass to the Senate Appropriations Committee made by Senator Grove, seconded by Senator Blanc. Any other further discussion from the committee? Seeing none, Secretary, those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Blanc.
Aye.
Duhamel.
No.
Grove.
Aye.
Melhoff.
Aye.
Pischke. Hulse.
Aye.
Colbeck.
Aye.
Madam Chair, we have 6 ayes, 1 nay.
All right, well, after receiving an affirmative of the members elect, we will send the bill to the Senate Appropriations Committee with a due pass recommendation. All right, moving on to House Bill 1175, revised provisions related to the Division of Criminal Investigation Cooperation with Indian Tribes. Back with Representative Poyer. Proponent testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I'm Representative Puri Poyer, District 27. Today I bring you House Bill 1175. So 1175 is a technical fix that brings our criminal background check statute into alignment with the reality of how all our tribal nations are operating today, not just one. Access to national criminal history record information remains a persistent statewide challenge for Indian country and is cited in audits, and the bill is a measured step to addressing that gap. Current law authorizes DCI, Division of Criminal Investigation, to run state and federal criminal history checks upon the request of the Sisseton Wahpeton Sioux tribe for certain sensitive tribal positions. That means, on the face of the statute, only one tribal government in South Dakota is clearly named as having access to this public safety tool, even though other tribes have the same needs and responsibilities when it comes to protecting children, elders, students, and the public. House Bill 1175 simply replaces that specific reference with any Indian tribe. It cleans up the language so that it clearly covers any individual seeking to be or currently serving in those listed roles. Those roles include tribal council and district council members, tribal judges, members of tribal boards and commissions, conservation officers, executives of tribal commercial businesses, faculty and administrators at tribal schools and programs, and people working in tribal child protection and youth programs. The intent of this proposal is permissive. It allows access to DCI and FBI criminal history checks upon the tribe's request and under the same parameters and safeguards already outlined in statute. We are not changing standards. We're not creating new mandates or shifting costs to the state. We are simply ensuring that all tribes have equal access to the same background check pathway that one tribe is already authorized to use. By way of background, I have extensive experience in this area. I have led the Oglala Sioux Tribe Background Investigations Office from 2015 to 2021, working directly with criminal history access, compliance, and audit findings. That experience has shown me both the importance of these tools and the structural barriers that tribes face in accessing them consistently and cleanly. House Bill 1175 is a modest but meaningful update. It does not expand state authority, but it does expand access for tribes who want to partner with DCI in keeping their community safe. I respectfully ask you a favorable consideration and a do pass recommendation on House Bill 1175. It is important to know I did work with the Attorney General's office while I drafted this bill, and I thank them for their willingness to work together. I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you for the further proponent testimony. Seeing none. Is there any opponent testimony? Also seeing none. We will move on to questions of the committee. Are there any committee questions? Seeing none, we will move on to discussion and or action. Senator Pischke.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move do pass on House Bill 1175.
All right, we have a do pass motion by Senator Pischke and a second by Senator Grove. Any discussion on your motion?
No, the bill looks good. I appreciate the representative for bringing it, and I advise that we send this to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Thank you.
Great. Well, seeing no further discussion on that motion, the motion is do pass. Oh, we have discussion on the motion.
Another great idea from Senator Pischke.
Yes, there we go. We're all jokes here. It's an afternoon committee meeting, that's for sure. All right, the motion is do pass. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Blanc.
Aye.
Duhamel.
Aye.
Grove.
Aye.
Melhoff.
Aye.
Pischke. Hulse.
Aye.
Colbeck.
Aye.
Madam Chair, we have 7 ayes, no nays.
All right, after receiving a majority of the members elect, the do pass motion passes, and we will send House Bill 1175 to the floor with a do pass recommendation. Any problems with certifying that for the consent? Seeing none, we will put that on the consent calendar. And with that, I will look for a motion to adjourn. All right, we have a motion by Senator Pischke, second by Senator Grove. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, we are adjourned.
SDP